All right, y'all, welcome back to Horn Takes Live. I'm your host, Sean Redfern. It's Wyoming week. Texas jumps to number 4 in the AP poll after a really, really big win over number 3 Alabama in Tuscaloosa. We had our first ever Horn Takes traveling roadshow over the weekend. It was semi-successful. Had a blast of a road trip. Met a lot of really great new people. Got a dub. But we had some technical challenges. We had some things that we need to work out before we head to the Red River Shootout in October. We'll be trying it all again. Check us out on Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, all at Horn Takes. If you just like to ride around and listen to podcasts, maybe you're jumping on a plane. Maybe you're headed to a football. Maybe you're going on your own road trip this weekend. Like to listen to podcasts? Check us out at horntakespodcast.buzzsprout.com. All our episodes go up there. All our episodes go up on YouTube. Real quick, before we get to this Texas-Alabama game, let's check out the Week 2 Trace Other Games recap. So every week, I'll pick 3 games, and that's where the Trace comes from. I do my Trace Other Games, and I break them down a little bit, and I do some predictions on those games. I've had a terrible year this year on my Trace Other Games. Last year, I was pretty good. But I've gone 1-3, 1-4-3, both weeks of the college football season so far. First one I did, and I don't know why I keep doing it, but I did it, Nebraska at 22, Colorado. I picked Nebraska to win this game 31-27. I thought maybe that Deion would have some issues keeping that team grounded. They just went on the road, won a really big game. Huge game for Deion, huge game for that whole roster. There's been a lot of people doubting them. I've been one of them. A lot of people think, they're not going to be a good team this year. I've been one of them. Huge home game. Big electricity. It was going to be a big deal. And I just thought maybe it would be a little too much for that team. I was wrong again. I think they had a slow start. I didn't get to watch the whole game. I watched very little of this game, actually. But I did see some of it. It looked like it was a relatively low scoring, really close game for maybe the first half. Then Colorado legged it out in the second half. They ended up winning the game 36-14. Shedeur Sanders must have looked really good again. I saw a graphic where he has got 900 yards through 2 games. I believe he's the first Colorado player in history to do that, which doesn't surprise me. He's the first Colorado quarterback to go over 500 the week before. Listen, folks, I said it before. I've been critical. I've been critical of Deion Sanders. I've been critical of Colorado and their ability to go try to win some of these games. So far, I've been really wrong. I mean, the offense looks good, and it's those guys, the guys I call the quadruplets, right? Shedeur Sanders, Edwards at running back, Horn at 1 wide receiver. The kid whose name escapes me, I can't believe his name escapes me. I tweeted him for Heisman. Travis Hunter at the other wide receiver position. Those guys are they're really good. And if that offensive line can continue to give them time, give Shedeur Sanders time. I was way wrong on Shedeur Sanders. I'll just throw that out there. I was wrong on Shedeur Sanders. So far, that dude's been on. I know they haven't played there's some tough games on their schedule coming up, and it's a long season. Don't get me wrong, folks. I still have some reservations about this Colorado team and about even Shedeur Sanders. I mean, I think things could get a lot tougher for him. But right now, They're doing it. Congrats to them. We'll see how the season goes the rest of the way. I'm interested in what happens with Colorado. 2 wins is already twice what they did last season. There's definitely a few more games you can look at their schedule, and you got to think they should probably win that game. They're going to be favored in some of those games. So we'll skip Colorado this week. I don't even remember who they're playing, but I think they've got like this stretch coming up where they've got Oregon. Maybe that's in a couple weeks, and they've got USC and Utah sprinkled in there as well. I think that'll be where we really get a chance to see, how good really is this team? Are they just kind of riding a high, an early season high, or are they actually really good and they're going to be able to come out and do this week in and week out? We'll see. Got that one wrong. Number 23, Texas A&M on the road at Miami. I picked Aggie. 38-28 in this one. I really thought, both these teams are kind of coming up on a crossroads last weekend. Both 5-7 last year. Both with an opportunity to sort of get some early momentum and kind of turn that 5-7 around. And I thought A&M would just be way too talented to go on the road and screw this up. And I was just absolutely, I keep forgetting that Aggie is going to Aggie, and those guys, they just went and didn't go play no defense, man. I think Miami scored, I saw it was 18 points in the fourth quarter of that game. Miami was clapping, and the field was slick, according to Jimbo Fisher. Anyway, 0 for 2. And here comes the one I got, number 13, Oregon at Texas Tech. I had Oregon 45-31. Oregon ends up winning that game 38-30, so I was pretty close on that one. I thought maybe Oregon might get a late score, something like that, something off of a turnover. And I don't even know what happened in this game. All I know is I was in Bryant-Denny Stadium, and every once in a while my wife would elbow me and show me the score of the game. And for a lot of it, a lot of the times when she showed me the score, Texas Tech had the lead. It was close. Seemed like it was close throughout. We talked about it. Jones Stadium is a tough place to play. I think if Oregon has this game at home, the score might look a lot different. But Jones Stadium at night, man, is if your team ever has to go to Jones Stadium at night, it's like a gamble whether you want to go to that. I think you want to go to that and I think you want to experience Jones Stadium at night and just the craziness that can happen, because sometimes the craziness works out in your favor. Sometimes it doesn't. I've been on both ends of that shit stick. So we go 1-3, 1-4-3 again. We got to do better this week. We got to get back on the winning side of this whole deal. Now let's talk about it. The All-State Crossbar Classic. By the way, is that not a terrible name for like a thing that you're going to try to do? The All-State Crossbar Classic. So Texas and Alabama kick it off in the inaugural All-State Crossbar Classic, which I think they're going to try to just sponsor a really big non-conference game every year. And I don't know how long the deal's for. Doesn't matter. I prefer to call it the Dust Up in Tuscaloosa. I think that sounds a lot cooler. And I know the game's not going to always be in Tuscaloosa. And I know that Texas and Alabama won't always be in this game, but I don't give a shit. I actually, folks, if you didn't see the show on Friday, so we drove Thursday, we drove Friday. We got to our destination in Columbus, Mississippi, really late Friday afternoon. I jumped up, got all my shit together, and I did a show live from the hotel in Columbus, Mississippi. I did my prediction. It was a quick show. I think it was like 25 minutes. I picked Bama, folks. I said there's two sides to my Texas fandom. I've got the heart side of me that just always feels like Texas has a chance and always can win a game, and then there's like the logical side of me that says, man, we have not gone on the road and played a team this tough and won a game against a team this tough in like since 2005. I mean, I think if you look back, that's the last time Texas went on the road and beat a really good, talented, well-coached football team was when they went up to Columbus and played Ohio State in 2005. And I had six thoughts, six questions, six things that kept just running through my mind as we drove from far out in West Texas, through Louisiana, through Mississippi. And I'll go over those things and we'll talk about them. Six things from the show on Friday. Can Texas be the storm? You know, you always talk about going on the road and weathering the storm, or even when you're at home and you've got an opponent that's just, you know, they're just really jacked up and it's going to be one of those deals where you kind of have to weather this storm, right? I don't like that. I think Texas has been trying to weather the storm for over a decade now, and I'm sitting there going, when are we just going to go be the storm? And I think if you're going to go play in a place like Bryant-Denny Stadium and you're going to play against a number 3 Alabama Crimson Tide team led by the greatest college football coach of all time, Nick Saban, you got to go be the storm. And I think they did that. The defense started out very fast. They controlled the line of scrimmage in the run game. They got a quick turnover that led to points for Texas. I think the offense sputtered a little bit early, but the defense was just so good. And I'm just talking like flying around the ball, like amazing. They were the storm. The Texas front seven was the storm in this game on Saturday night. Texas only trailed in this game for 69 seconds. And that's because they went out and they were the storm instead of trying to weather the storm. Another thought I had is, man, we watched Rice. I don't know how many sacks did Rice get? 3 sacks, 4 sacks against Texas. They really blew up the running game. Just made the offensive line look really pedestrian in week 1. We all know what happened last year in this game. Quinn Ewers gets knocked out really early in this game. So could the Texas offensive line figure out a way to keep Ewers clean in this game? Bama's stout. And the Texas offensive line answered the bell in a big, big way. No sacks. Like hardly any QB pressures. There wasn't very many times where anything Alabama did affected Quinn Ewers. They didn't have a huge day on the ground. The yards were tough when they did try to run the ball, but they had some very good situational running times during this game. There were some times during this game where situationally they were able to line up, run the ball, chew some clock, pick up yards, pick up first downs. The offensive line for Texas absolutely met the bell. Something that's been terrifying me all preseason leading up to this game is, can Texas contain Jalen Milroe in the running game? And not just the called runs, but when the play breaks down, when the passing play breaks down and Milroe says, there's a little hole, I'm gone, can Texas be there to disrupt him? I thought this was a huge key for Texas in this game. Milroe's the kind of guy that could go 150 and 3 touchdowns on you, like in a hurry. And I think for the most part, the Texas defense did a really good job. Milroe was able to extend a few drives with his feet, but he never really hurt Texas with his feet. There were always bodies, always hats, always white jerseys getting to Jalen Milroe when he tucked that ball and took off. I wondered to myself, how banged up is this Alabama secondary? And if they are banged up, are they going to play? And if they do play, how can they hang or could they hang with one of the best wide receiver rooms in the country? And the answer to that one was a resounding no. They absolutely could not. Almost 350 yards passing for Quinn Ewers, 3 touchdowns. Alabama really struggled in the secondary to keep up. And I think a lot of teams are going to struggle in the secondary to keep up with this Texas team. And then the other thing I started thinking to myself was this Bama offensive line. Everybody's been talking about them, and they are huge. Massive. That Caden Proctor, I believe his name's Caden. I know his last name's Proctor. That left tackle for Alabama is a big, I can't even believe that. That kid is 18 years old. And he's what, like 6'6", 360 pounds. I mean, a well put together young man. And there's 2 other ones on that line that are over 350, and none of them are small. I think the center is 305, 310, something like that. And you look back at this team, this Alabama team, and you go that they want to run the ball now. Milroe can throw, but you knew coming into this season that they'd want to establish the running game like a lot of Alabama teams used to do earlier in the Nick Saban era there at Alabama. So would they be able to do that? They looked really good at first. Like starting out the game, they plowed some holes and got some tough yards. We're moving the sticks a little bit in the running game. But overall, 3.1 yards per carry given up by Texas. I say that's a huge win for the Texas defense right there. And then the other thing that just kept going through my mind is I kept looking back to this 2009 national championship game. You got both teams undefeated. Obviously Alabama was a pretty decent team the year before, and they're way better than pretty decent. They were 12-2. Believe they won the SEC, but they hadn't won the national championship. And then you got Texas, who was in their second national championship, could have been in their third national championship in 3 or 4 years. Sort of, obviously not the same success winning championships that Alabama has had, but when you go back to that era of college football, Texas is certainly one of those top 5 type teams that you looked at, and they were certainly the top 5 most successful teams in college football during that time. So you kind of had Texas that was sort of living at the top, and you had Alabama that was trying to come up, trying to pull themselves off the mat from just I don't know how many years, but a long, long time. Probably longer than what Texas fans have been dealing with here lately. And they get that big win, and then, man, the rest is history. Nick Saban just goes on an absolute historic run through college football. And so I was wondering, is this game for Texas obviously a different scenario? It's a regular season, second week of the season type game. But 2 pretty highly ranked teams, 2 really talented rosters, one that's been at the top for the last decade, and then the other one that's been trying to pull themselves off the mat. What could a win what could a win for Texas do? Could that springboard Texas into their own really successful streak of seasons? So you look at the offense from Saturday night, and we watched the game live. Obviously, we were there, had a blast. Come home Sunday, get home pretty late Sunday night. Get up Monday morning. We both took off, me and my wife. We rewatched the game, and I start taking notes of what I'm seeing. Like lots of explosive plays, first of all, especially through the passing game. Scored 34 points, and they missed a lot of opportunities. We'll talk about those in a little bit. We had talked on Friday in our live show from Columbus, Mississippi, hotel room, undisclosed location. We had talked about how we thought the Texas offensive line and the Bama defensive line were kind of a wash. But I think the Texas offensive line won that matchup. I think Campbell and Connor were much better on the interior. I thought they were really good in the passing game. Like we said earlier, Quinn Ewers didn't have to worry about getting hit too often this game. So we're going to give the offensive line a B-plus grade for that game. And the only reason they're getting a B-plus and they're not in the A's is because I really want to see this group come together and start creating some space for the running backs more consistently. And I know I say that with kind of a grain of salt because I know that's not Sark's. Sark says he wants to run the ball. But very rarely does Sark really commit to running the ball. I don't know that I necessarily blame him. Ewers has been really good through 2 weeks, been really efficient, and the weapons he's got. I mean, there's a lot of. You'd have to be pretty bad to fail with the weapons that Quinn Ewers has right now at his disposal in the passing game. But I want to see these guys get on track and really start just making some space. Now, they did it a couple times in this Bama game. But there was a lot of tough sledding in the run game, but for both sides in this game. Quinn Ewers, 349 yards, 3 touchdowns on 24 for 38 passing. That's 63%. That's a second week in a row at 63%. I thought Quinn looked more poised than we've ever seen Quinn Ewers look. There were a couple of times where he got a little antsy and got his feet a little crazy and didn't step into throws and didn't get set for throws. But most of the time, he was smooth. He took what the defense gave him. He threw a lot of short stuff to the running backs. He hit a lot of guys over the middle on intermediate stuff. He took his shots and delivered balls that were catchable downfield. Gave his guys a chance on those deep balls. Quinn Ewers is normally like a really stoic guy. Like last season, through the first couple of games, before he got hurt against Alabama, I made a comment on my show, and I was saying, or actually I just made a comment on TikTok. I didn't even have a show at the time. We didn't even start the show until after the Oklahoma game. History lesson. But did a lot of TikToking about the Texas football team, and I made a TikTok one day about how just really stoic Quinn Ewers seems to be for a young kid. He doesn't get up, he doesn't get down. And I even made the comment he's almost like a sociopath. Like nothing gets to him, whether it's good or bad. And finally in this game, we got to see Quinn Ewers late in this game just kind of erupt emotionally. And I think that was a lot of pressure just finally coming off of his back. And he was just really in the moment, excited. So that was good to see, man. I was happy for Quinn. Quinn has been under a lot of pressure. And you had guys talking from the NFL all week about, this is a make or break type game for Quinn Ewers. This is a game that could decide whether Quinn Ewers is a first round draft pick or whether scouts tell Quinn Ewers stay home for another year, get better, and play another season at Texas and see if you can increase your draft stock because you're not going to go very high this year. I can't imagine having that type of pressure. And then you just think about, in Sark's offense, the quarterback makes that thing go round. And he knows that. And he knew that he was taking his team on the road to play a really tough opponent in a really tough place. So I can't imagine the pressure. And it all just went away after that last touchdown pass to A.D. Mitchell. Good for Quinn. I think it'll be good for the team too. Because I think teams need their quarterback to be a badass. I think teams need their quarterback to be a vocal leader as much as he is an on-the-field leader. And I think you're starting to see Quinn kind of gain enough confidence to do that. I think he's comfortable in his position right now. He's comfortable with everything there in Austin. I gave Quinn an A grade for this game. Thought he was really, really good. Don't think you could have asked him to do too much more than what he did. Wide receivers and tight ends, they were pretty good, although they left some of it on the table. They left some scores on the table. A.D. Mitchell, 3 catches for 78 yards, 2 touchdowns. His catch that wasn't a touchdown was huge. Coming out of deep in their own territory. Releases on a nice little fade. Quinn puts the ball out there. I'll tell you what, A.D. Mitchell, if I'm doing 50-50 ball, A.D. Mitchell is my dude all day long. I would have the utmost confidence that A.G. Mitchell is either going to catch the ball or he's going to compete for that ball at such a level that the other guy does not catch the ball. Huge game for A.D. Mitchell. Worthy had 5 catches for 75 yards, including just an absolute beauty. We talked a whole lot last year about Xavier Worthy not being able to track a deep ball and Xavier Worthy giving up on deep balls and Xavier Worthy not competing for deep balls. And that catch he made Saturday night in Tuscaloosa should shut all that shit up real quick. And I was one of them, so I'm shutting up on it too. He had his guy beat. That ball was not perfectly placed. Xavier Worthy was getting across the field. The ball's thrown more to the center of the field. So he has to bend back towards the goalpost, all while looking up over his shoulder. Makes a great catch in the end zone. Good for Xavier Worthy. I would have loved to see him squeeze that one earlier in the game. I think if Worthy really wants to take that next step and be that guy, be what I think a lot of people think he could be a really high draft pick next year as well. He's got to concentrate and make those types of plays as well. JT Sanders had 5 catches for 114 yards. That's what JT Sanders can be, folks. I really liked how Sark got him involved in the game plan. Got him coming across formations. That's what tight ends do. Huge game for JT Sanders. Jordan Whittington had 3 catches for 44 yards, including a really big 32-yard catch to get Texas deep down into Alabama territory. The one place where I felt like this group did not do that well, and we talked about it after the first game against Rice too, was in the blocking game. JT Sanders really struggled in the blocking game Saturday night. There was the reverse play to Xavier Worthy that if he just kicks out that cornerback, Xavier Worthy is walking to the end zone. And then there was a 4th down play where Jonathan Brooks came up just short. Dallas Turner's running behind the line of scrimmage, running behind his defensive lineman, trying to get in a position. As soon as the ball snapped, he just absolutely punches JT Sanders back into the middle of the field, wraps up Brooks, stops him a ball short of the first down. That was a big play. I don't know if Sanders didn't see him. I hope that's what it was, because if he saw him, he wasn't ready to be a blocker physically at that moment. I did think Mitchell did a little bit better. Mitchell was really bad blocking in week 1. Thought he looked a little bit better in week 2 against Alabama. I give these wide receivers and tight ends an A-. They left some points on the table. Whether they were trying to catch the ball in the end zone or whether they were trying to block for somebody else, they left a few points on the table. Running backs, hey, man, workman's effort. Nothing flashy about anything these running backs really did in this game. Brooks and Baxter were 26 carries for 93 yards. on the ground, 5 catches for 25 yards in the passing game. Brooks dropped a touchdown early on in the game. It's the second one of the season. He's a really good back out of the backfield, has good hands. I think it's just a concentration and finish type thing. Would love to see him get a little bit better at that. But I think this group, I think they knew the game. I mean, they knew they weren't going to be the featured group in this game. And they knew that when they were going to be asked to do something and step up for their team, it wasn't going to be easy. It was going to be when everybody in the stadium knew Texas is running the ball. And I think they did pretty well in those situations. Brooks had a really tough run for a touchdown late in the game. Second half of the game. And then they get the ball back with 7 minutes to go in the fourth quarter with a 10-point lead, and they run 7 minutes off the clock. When's the last time you saw a Texas team be able to just end the game with the ball in their hands? I'll tell you the last time I saw it was against Baylor last year. But Baylor last year wasn't Alabama this year. I think that's really impressive. So I'm going to give the backs a B- for this game because we dropped a touchdown pass. They weren't a big part of the offensive game plan. But again, man, they did what the team asked them to do. They did what Steve Sarkisian asked them to do. On to the defense. I thought the tackling was really good in this game. The tackling was really good in week 1. One of the biggest differences between the NFL and college football, and I only watch one NFL game a week, and that's the Dallas Cowboys. My wife is an absolute diehard Dallas Cowboy fan. The tackling. NFL players do not miss tackles. And elite college football defenses do not miss tackles. And they did miss a few, but Texas Longhorns defense is really starting to look like they could shape up to be a really, really good defense. I think this defense needs to get better in the middle of the field in the passing game. Bama was able to take advantage of them a couple of times there. Again, they contained Milroe in the running game. He did get yards. He did pick up some first downs, but he never got a big, huge chunk. Never got like a game-changing type run against this Texas defense. Texas needs to continue to get better at finishing. You know, the whole talk in the offseason was that this Texas defensive line got more pressures than any other defensive line in the country on quarterbacks in 2022. But they were barely in the top 40 in sacks. So there was a big emphasis for Coach K on getting these guys to finish. And you're starting to see it a little bit, but I think there were a lot of opportunities in this game against Bama where they were there and they just couldn't finish. We talked on Friday about, you know, the biggest matchup for us in this game we thought was going to be the Texas defensive line against that really powerful, really talented Alabama offensive line. We said whoever wins that matchup the most consistently is going to win this game. And I think if you look at the film, you watch the game, it certainly appeared so live at the game. But when you come home and watch the replay, Texas dominated this game on both sides of the line of scrimmage. They really, really got active in the pass game in the second quarter defensively. Started putting a lot of pressure on Jalen Milroe. 5 sacks in the game. They only gave up 107 rushing yards against Alabama. Ethan Burke is a guy we've been talking about all offseason. 4 solo tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack. I think he had 2. I guess Milroe got back to the line of scrimmage on that one. But he flashed. I mean, you see him out there and you go, yep, that dude's good. Tavondre Sweat had a pretty quiet night, but he had another sack. You know he was eating up blocks on the interior. All those guys, Broughton, Alfred Collins. They didn't have a very flashy night statistically. But I think what I saw was them wreaking havoc in that interior of that Alabama offensive line, not letting them get comfortable, pushing them back in the pass game. Give that defensive line an A. Really, really good night. I mean, they knew we have to win this game. Trench warfare is where it's at. The offensive line and the defensive line both said, we got to go win this game. We got to go dominate our opponent. If we do that the majority of the game, we'll win the game. And that's what they both did. And that's what happened. Linebackers, David Benda with just a really, really just effort-filled sack. Gets chopped down by a running back as he's blitzing through. Gets up, chases down Milroe. Nice play. Ant Hill finally have his breakout. I say finally. Second game of his career in college. The really good true freshman. He had 2 sacks. He was asked to spy Milroe a lot in this game. And he made some mistakes. But his athleticism allowed him to get back into plays that most guys wouldn't have been able to get back into. I look at Ant Hill in this game, and I don't think I've seen a freshman linebacker at the University of Texas as active as he is since Derek Johnson. And I know that's super high praise, but I think Ant Hill is about to have a absolute freshman All-American season. It was a pretty quiet night for Jalen Ford. He did have a near interception. He had a few tackles of his own. But guys stepped up. And I'm going to give the linebackers an A for Saturday night. They were really good in the run game. They were good in the pass game. They got after the quarterback when they got asked to get after the quarterback. DBs held Bama to 255 yards, passing on 14 of 27 attempts. That's just a tick over 52%. Jaron Thompson and Jahdae Barron, both with interceptions. Nice plays by them. Good calls defensively. Nice disguising of coverages by those guys. And then they made plays. Another emphasis for this team, this defense in the offseason was we got to get more turnovers. They were like kind of abysmal forcing turnovers last year. They've already got 5 through 2 games in 2023. So they're looking really good. Ryan Watts had a really nice play. Really nice pass breakup. Near interception. Down in the end zone. I thought they looked good in coverage all night. I mean, there was just very few breakdowns. They're really the only one I could think of that was just egregious was the long throw to, what is it, Burton, the other Georgia transfer wide receiver. Milroe dropped a dime on that one, and he definitely beat our single coverage safety. But for the most part, they were where they needed to be. Thought it was a really good effort. I'm excited to. I mean, it's been a long time since we've had DBs that you didn't cringe every time you saw the ball go down the field. Still think we got to get better on third downs. Third and long has been better this season. It was okay against Alabama, but we got to get better there if you want to truly take that next step and be elite. I gave them a B, and maybe that's a little harsh. Can't get beat man-to-man the way they got beat. And you can't give up all that stuff over the middle of the field. Those easy throws that they gave Milroe over the middle of the field. Got to get better at that. And I know, credit Milroe. I mean, they were in zone on a lot of those plays, and he found the zone and made good passes. Milroe's getting beat up by his own fan base, and I think it sucks. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but I know he had his struggles in this game, but I didn't think he was that bad. And if they'll leave that kid alone and give him some time to develop, I think Milroe can be really good. Special teams, couple of nice punts by Sanborn. Bama had no returns in this game. Nothing big at all. They almost had no returns in this game. I think they brought one kickoff out, and we knocked them down at the 21-yard line. Bert Auburn was 2 of 3 for field goals. Missed one. Pretty long one. Shanked it a little bit to the left. Got a little excited. I gave these guys a B+. Wouldn't know how else to rank it. So part of what we wanted to do for this traveling roadshow was give you guys a glimpse of the game day atmosphere. And I gotta admit, we had some technical difficulties, and I got caught up in the tailgating and the fun myself, and I just didn't do a good job of doing what I intended to do. So I got to get better on that. Just like you should go back and listen to my first show on this thing. It's terrible. Maybe these are terrible too. I don't know. I feel like I'm better at it though, at least. So we'll get better at that. But let's talk about this game day atmosphere in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Folks, the SEC, it really does just mean more to these folks. The tailgating was an absolute great environment there in the quad. I expected maybe more people, although there were a ton of people. By the time it was time to go into the game, the quad was pretty well jam-packed with folks. Real quick shout out to Surly Horns. You can go to surlyhorns.com. These guys are some kind of message board for Texas football fans, and they had a tailgate there, and that's where we ended up hanging out most of the afternoon. These guys are they're NIL guys as well. Burnt Ends. They do a I don't know if it's a collective. I don't want to say the wrong word. All I know is Burnt Ends is for the tight ends. So they raise money to help give the tight ends NIL money. They do something with the Texas One Fund as well, I believe. So this group, as well as being just a website for guys to go and talk shit about Texas football and exchange tickets and all that kind of good stuff, they're really active in the NIL game. They put on a great tailgate, absolute blast, met a lot of cool people. There was a massive Texas presence in the quad for most of the time after game day and leading up to time to go walk into the stadium for this football game. Massive. This Surly Horns tailgate, when we walked over there, we were kind of walking around, just kind of getting the lay of the land right after game day, and looked over and I saw this group of, and Alabama does something probably similar to what Texas does. They put out all these tents, you reserve them. That's your spot. So they reserved a spot for this tailgate against Alabama, and I saw this group of Texas fans, and at the time there was probably between 10 and 15 Texas fans just hanging out around this tent. So I look over at my wife and said, hey, you want to go check that? And we'd already been invited to several Alabama fans as we had stopped and talked to Alabama fans and took pictures and, just stuff like that. But we thought, it'd be good to just hang out with some Texas fans, get comfortable, and maybe then we can go, hang out with some more Bama fans. So we go over there, and by the time we never left. By the time it was time to go to game day, the game, there had to be 200 Texas fans in this one small spot. So kudos for Texas fans. And I'm sure there were other spots around that, around the quad that had, similar Texas presence for tailgating. Let's talk about these Bama fans. I know there's some bad press for the Bama fans right now. There were some really rough comments that shouldn't have been said to some Texas players. I heard some stories about Texas player parents having some bad experiences with Alabama fans. So all I can do is speak about my experience with Bama fans. And the vast majority of these folks were very humble and very welcoming. And really, outside of, the only people you had trouble with were sort of the frat guys. The frat guys or the younger guys. Maybe they're not even students. Maybe they're just out of school. But they're still young and stupid. Those were the only guys I had any issue with. And really, most of even that was just, friendly, just college football banner, stuff you would expect to hear before, a big football game. So almost no big deal there in my experience. I heard so many welcome to Alabamas. I hope you enjoy your stay. We got out of the truck. We parked in Lot A way out by the soccer field. Got out of the truck. Before we got on the bus, we needed to take a pit stop. I was waiting on my wife. We had been out of the truck for like maybe 2 minutes. Some guy walks up behind me, taps me on the shoulder, says, "Welcome to Alabama. Do you have any questions about how to get anywhere? Da-da-da-da-da. Just get on this bus. It'll go here, 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 here." Which I already knew all this stuff, but I thought it was really cool for this guy to just come out of his way and just offer up that type of help to me. Standing at game day, I had people come up and just shake my hand. "Welcome to Alabama." Again, multiple folks invited us to hang out at their tailgates. Again, my experience, and I know I'm not doubting that these other things happen. I feel like it's important that everybody here's other sides of Texas experiences with Alabama fans. I do truly believe that I've been to a bunch of road games, and I feel like Alabama fans as a whole were the best fans we've ever hung out with. So all I would say is while what these few folks did do to Texas visitors was just reprehensible, most of these folks are really good people, in my experience. So kudos to Al, and they were really cool after the game too. I had guys coming up to me, shaking my hand after the game, saying, "Good game. Good luck for the rest of the season." I had nobody, with the exception of one little group of frat boys, say anything to me, shit talking wise the entire game. The game atmosphere was just electric all night long. That Bryant-Denny Stadium is a really cool place to go watch a football game. It's big, over 100,000, but it's sort of quaint. We set up in the upper deck, right about even with the goal line, maybe about halfway deep into the goal line or into the end zone. You could see everything really well. Don't feel like we missed anything. The only thing we did miss was Quinn Ewers catching his own pass and running out. We thought it was just a run. Just look for our vantage point, it looked like he just pump faked and then ran. Again, pom-poms, the atmosphere, man. I'm not a big pom-pom dude, and I'm not advocating that we should be pom-pom people at the University of Texas. But every man, woman, and child had a pom-pom in their hand. They had boxes of pom-poms at every single entrance into the stands. You just pick up a pom-pom. And you know what? I'm really pissed off. I was like halfway through Mississippi. I turned and looked at my wife on the way back, and I said, "Man, I can't believe I didn't grab a pom-pom. That would have been really cool on like my wall of shit, or like my shelves that I got down in the basement with all kinds of just neat sports stuff that I've collected over time." I don't think I'm ever going to get Dixieland Delight out of my head. I woke up several times since we've been home with Dixieland Delight going through my head. It's a cool song anyway, but the Alabama fans really make it their own. I thought it was really cool the way I don't know what the hell they're saying. I think they say Roll Tide, and then they say, and whoever their opponent is too, I think. Hard to tell. Hard to tell when you're up in the stands with it all, but the atmosphere inside the game was amazing. Loud. I don't know what song they played or what. It's probably something they do all the time. You could feel the stadium shaking. You could feel the whole underneath of you like moving. That's how loud it was. I think when you think about SEC slugfests, you see these really good SEC games over the years. This was kind of one of those games to me. That's what it felt like. It felt like two really talented teams just going at it, and one of them just making a little more plays to pull out the win. I think this Texas team looked disciplined. They looked ready to play. They were loose, but not unfocused. They had almost no penalties in this game and no procedure penalties in this game. And procedure penalties were something that really, really plagued Texas down the stretch last year. And they even had some against Rice in week 1. So I was really worried about that. And then when we get in the place and you feel how loud it is and the whole damn place is actually moving, you think to yourself, man, there ain't no way we can do shit in this game. Like, how do you handle that? I can't even imagine how loud it was down on the field. They handled it like a champ. Very few mistakes. The crowd seemed to have absolutely no effect on Texas whatsoever. If anything, they fed off of it. They used it to energize them. I think this Texas team looks big, very fast, and very physical. I think you can put the whole Texas is not ready for the SEC narrative completely to bed. And I can't tell you how many times I heard that. I did a lot of TikToks on the way up, the way over. And I got so many comments. That's a long way to drive just to get your ass kicked. And Texas is going to take a whipping and, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And, whether we did or whether we didn't, I didn't care. I just wanted to go to a cool place I'd never been before, have a good experience watching a football game, support the Texas Longhorns. It's what we like to do. And, man, nothing could be further from the truth. That team, in 3 years under Sark, that team has gone from a team that would lay down and quit at any sign of adversity, looked smaller than the other team, looked slower than the other team almost any time they played a decent team. So now they look like a team other teams don't want to mess with. And I know I keep comparing them to Alabama, and my intent is not to say that they are like Alabama, but that's the type of roster they have right now. They have a very Alabama-esque roster at the University of Texas right now. And I think that's all on Sark for recruiting them. They've developed them both physically and mentally. They've developed their football skills so they can compete and perform. 3 years, folks, and he's turned this thing into something that's pretty dangerous. Could be pretty dangerous this year. I really like the offensive game plan. I thought it was aggressive, but it was not. We've seen Sark in the past just kind of like go on tilt. Any of you guys play poker or have ever played poker, or maybe you've just seen a poker movie. You probably heard the term go on tilt, and that's when you just, something bad happens and you lose your shit and you just start making really dumb plays. And I felt like a lot of times last year, Sark would just go on tilt with the pass game and just completely abandon the run and just start chunking the ball down the field. I thought they took their spots. They picked their spots really well in this Alabama game, and then they executed perfectly, almost perfectly. I think the defense looks to be the strength of this team, but the offense, again, very dangerous. And as Quinn Ewers continues to get comfortable within this offense, and if that running game can get going, you're going to start to see a lot of guys in orange and white running down the field with nobody even anywhere close to them catching touchdown passes. We talked about it a little bit earlier. The Texas fans showed up like in droves. You could hear them during the game. When something good happened for Texas, you could hear them, but you couldn't really tell how many Texas fans there really were. Oddly enough, that crimson color and that burnt orange color for an old guy like me look pretty similar at night under stadium lights. So you couldn't really tell until Alabama fans start clearing out, inside of 3 minutes to go or so. They start clearing out the stadium, and you look across, and you're just like, holy shit, there's a lot of Texas fans in here. I don't know. I'm terrible at this, but I'm going to guess there were around 15 or 20,000 Texas fans. I don't know. If you were there, let me know what you think. One Bama fan said it was the loudest he had ever heard a visiting crowd at Bryant-Denny Stadium. I believe it. Texas fans were loud and proud. The band was loud and proud. The band had a really small, usually when bands go on the road, they don't bring the whole band. So it was a very, very small group of the band. They were way up in the northeast corner of the stadium. Way up. There's a picture. There's a picture somewhere on the internet that there's the band. Like, holy shit, they're up there. So what's this type of road win mean for Texas? Let's talk about it. We were on the Spurs Up show June or July. Chris was talking about, Texas coming to the SEC. That's why he brought me on the show, and we got to talking about this Alabama game and what could this Texas season be? And I said, man, if Texas can find a way to go into Tuscaloosa and win that game, I could see this team being undefeated and making a playoff. I'm not calling that right now. I'm not going to do that. But, I could see them. They're certainly talented enough to run the table. But what this Texas team did Saturday night was really impressive. They snapped a 21-game home winning streak for Alabama, a 57-game non-conference home winning streak for Alabama. They handed Alabama their worst home loss since 2004. And Sark's the first Saban disciple to go into Bryant-Denny Stadium and beat Nick Saban. He's the third Saban disciple to beat Saban. You look at recruiting, what this could mean for recruiting. As we were riding up, we did a TikTok talking about there were 14 or 15 number one and number two players at their position from the 2024 to the 2026 classes at this game. There were over 40 blue chip players on an Alabama recruiting visit at this game. And what they watched was Texas come out as a 7-point dog and beat Bama by 10 in their house, something that's very hard to do, even for really good teams. And they watched them control the game almost the entirety of the game. 69 seconds, Texas didn't have the lead in this game. There's a video out there of Keelan Robinson running through the end zone, telling all the recruits, go to Texas. They won't all. Maybe none of them will, but I bet you they are thinking about it. I bet you Sark gets a lot of visits from a lot of those kids that were at this game. I bet you Sark gets a lot of visits from other highly rated football players that weren't at this game. That's some instant credibility for Sark. That's instant credibility for the Texas Longhorns. The quick and dirty Wyoming edition. Texas is a 28.5-point favorite. I've had a lot of people ask me, should Texas fans be worried about this game? I think this is a trap game. I think it's hard to go on the road and do what Texas just did against a really good opponent and not have a little let up when you come home. So if Texas is able to come home and really come out of the gate swinging on Wyoming and there's no letdown, hell of a job by Steve Sarkisian, hell of a job by those sort of senior leaders or, whatever the leadership on that team is. Not a lot of seniors on this team. But I do think this is a game, and I don't necessarily mean a trap game like I think Wyoming will beat Texas. They certainly could. But I definitely think it's going to be a game where Texas doesn't look as good as they did last week, and they don't look as good as they should look against a team like Wyoming. So I think if you're Texas, you got to enjoy the win. You always should enjoy these wins, but then you need to get back to work. You need to get yourself prepared physically, mentally, to go out and jump on Wyoming like flies on shit and never take your boot off of their neck. And that goes from every single dude on this coaching staff down to the last walk-on player that'll never see the field. That's what Texas needs to do this week. Get themselves ready for that. I think Texas needs to go out and establish the fact that they can run the football. Wyoming hasn't given up a 100-yard rusher all season. And I know they only played Tech, and I know they only played Portland State. I don't give a damn. That says something. So there's your quick and dirty. We'll talk a lot more about this game on Thursday night, 6 p.m. Central Time, when we do our live show that night. Just some random college football thoughts from week 2. Texas number 4 in the AP poll. Is it too high? Is it too low? I don't give a shit. If you're number 4, you're right where you need to be. Keep winning. Keep winning. That number next to your name doesn't mean shit now. It means absolutely nothing. Keep getting yourself ready to go win games and go win games. You'll be in the playoff. Where did Texas Tech and Aggie go from here? This was kind of like, in Red Raider land, and folks, I live in Lubbock. In Red Raider land, this was their year. Texas Tech fans supremely confident that they are going to compete for the Big 12 championship in 2023. And now they're 0-2. 2 games into the season, they're 0-2. Has the air completely gone out of Texas Tech? I don't know. I think what you're going to see is a quarterback change. I think Baron Morton is probably going to get a shot this weekend. We thought he might get a shot this week against Oregon or last weekend against Oregon. Didn't happen, as far as I know. But I think they got to go with somebody. Tyler Shuck has still not won a game. And more importantly, Texas Tech has still not won a game that Tyler Shuck has started and finished. I don't know. I'm not ready to completely write Tech off because I think you can't do that. I just don't think you can make those types of overreactions this early in the season either way. But man, Tech fans could turn on you quick. We talked about it last week. Joey McGuire has got to get something going or they're going to run him smooth out of Lubbock, and they're going to do it very hatefully because that's what they do. And then you got Texas A&M that had a chance to go on the road against a team that, let's be honest, Miami's not a great team, but they're a great name. You go win that game and you can get yourself some respect because you beat Miami. At this point, I have no idea if there's any chance to salvage. I know it's early, but Miami is not a good team. And A&M's in the SEC West with LSU with Arkansas, with Alabama. They have a tough schedule. I don't know. We'll see. Mel Tucker out at Michigan State. Man, I don't even know what to say about this. Guys, just don't jerk off on phone calls. That's all. I think that's all you can say about this. There's a time and place. That ain't it. It's undefeated, fellas. Don't let it get you. Let's talk about this Nick Saban and the Bama dynasty. There's a whole lot of talk about, from Alabama fans, the dynasty's over. It's done. We're through. There's talk about, there's all kinds of rumors floating around about, Alabama's going to try to get Deion Sanders, and Saban is retiring after this season, and that's why he built that house or bought that house, or whatever it is. There's all this stuff flying around. And I posed the question last season. Are we finally starting to see, are we kind of watching Nick Saban's, reign kind of come to an end? Is that happening right before our eyes? I'm not ready to say it is yet, but man, it's sure starting to look like, we talked last week about kind of the similarities between the downfall of Mac Brown and you look at what's going on at Clemson with Dabo Swinney. Certainly, it's not nearly as rough right now for Nick Saban in Alabama. But man, I just don't feel like Nick Saban is the same guy he was, 5 years ago, and that's understandable. He's getting older. He's won everything you can possibly win. It's probably even hard for him to stay motivated. But these Bama fans have absolutely lost their minds. There's some of them calling for Saban to be fired, calling for Saban to step down. Folks, here is some perspective. And this is for Bama fans, and this is for other fans. Nick Saban has had Bama in the national championship game 56% of the seasons he's been at Alabama. 56%. They've been in the national championship game. And Nick Saban has won the national championship 37% of the seasons he's been the coach at the University of Alabama. That is absurd. And it's even more absurd for fans. It was one game, guys. I mean, it was one game. And you know what? I think Texas is a pretty decent team. I mean, still a young season, but that was pretty impressive what the University of Texas football team was able to do Saturday night. And then you got Jalen Milroe, and we talked about it a little bit. He's getting beat up by his own fan base, and I don't think it's fair at all. I think Jalen Milroe is a lot further ahead than Vince Young was at this point in their careers in the passing game. He just got fooled on a couple plays, y'all. He got fooled on a couple plays, and his mechanics got away from him on a couple others where he missed passes. Threw for 255 yards, 2 touchdowns. Check us out Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Central. We're going to go live on TikTok, man. I did it last week. It was pretty good. Had some people show up. Enjoyed it. So we'll try to do that every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Thursday, we're going to have our Week 3 Trace Other games. We're going to try to do better than we've done so far this season. We'll break down the Wyoming game. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check out the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. We're on Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, all at Horn Takes. You can email me at horntakespodcast@gmail.com with all your questions, comments, concerns, and criticisms. I love them all. You guys get hooked. Have a good night.